Welcome to the Reality Revolution. I'm your host, Brian Scott. Today we're going to do another one of the Parker Publishing books. Check out my previous episodes. I have several where I have read from some of these very old, obscure Parker Publishing books. And some of them are pretty fascinating. In fact, in many of these cases, it's an anonymous author or another author who wrote anonymously. This one is by Kingdon Brown. It says that he holds a Bachelor of Science degree from Northwestern University as the presiding spiritual leader of St. Timothy's Abbey Church in Detroit. Ordained by the Natural Spiritual Aid Association, he is a certified medium. The Spiritual Frontiers Fellowship, the Association for Research and Enlightenment, and a charter member of the Esp Research Associates Foundation. I don't know if that's really who he is. As I did some investigation, I couldn't find him other than in relation to this book. But the book is really well written, and it has some really good chapters, and I want to actually do several episodes from it. Today's episode is about ESP, but in particular, a very specific guide on how to use ESP, how to get extrasensory impressions. I don't know if this is something that you've experimented with, but I think it's super important as we move into the reality revolution. Many will find a heightened sense of extrasensory abilities, a greater sense of intuition, an ability to, for instance, read minds or sense the future of events before they unfold, to hear people's thoughts. So many different abilities are available. Psychometry. All of these abilities are available to you right now. You can use them. You're just not aware of it. It's like that one thing in your car you weren't aware of. A switch or special detail. Something that you have that you're not aware of. And I really liked how this chapter explained how to be guided through these impressions that you get and to make sense of them. Gerard E. Pierce, a theology student at the Duke University School of Religion, sat in a study cubicle in the library stacks. He paused and then wrote a symbol on his sheet of paper. He had 5 symbols to choose from. Dr. J.G. Pratt, a colleague of Dr. J.B. Reina, was in the psychology laboratory, then located in the physics building on the vast campus. Slowly, the professor turned over the cards, the now famous extrasensory perception cards developed by Dr. Rhine. Each symbol, a star, wavy lines, a circle, a square, or a plus mark. Pierce was to guess which cards were being turned over by Dr. Pratt. The result was one of the most astounding displays of extrasensory perception ever recorded. The odds against the Pierce-Pratt series were phenomenal in terms of statistical probability, yet this series of runs was the real extrasensory perception breakthrough. The authenticity of Pierce's clairvoyance held up under unbiased scientific scrutiny. Precognition. Next came precognition, the ability to foretell what cards would be turned up before they were turned up. Pierce performed as well as he had when he was applying his gift of clairvoyance to the present. It was one thing to collect thousands and thousands of cases of spontaneous extrasensory perception, but quite another to demonstrate it under controlled laboratory conditions and prove it statistically. There are other more spectacular examples. Gene Dixon, the Washington seeress, is credited with having predicted the assassination of President John F. Kennedy, the name of his killer, the assassination of Mahatma Gandhi, the death of both Doug Hammarskjöld and Carol Lombard by plane, Marilyn Monroe's suicide, the adoption of communism by China, and the Soviet Sputnik. There's the fantastic story of entranced Edgar Casey, who was able to diagnose and prescribe for people unknown to him and many, many miles away. His psychic readings are recorded and stored at the Association for Research and Enlightenment at Virginia Beach, Virginia. It is estimated that he gave more than 14,000 readings between 1901 and 1944. Of the readings on file, about 8,000 deal with problems of the mind and body, 2,500 deal with human relations and psychological problems, and about 2,600 are so miscellaneous and deal with philosophical questions. Gerard Quasat, the amazing Dutch clairvoyant, is able to find lost people, predict who will occupy a given theater seat, and even heal through his psychic sense. There is the tested and retested Eileen Garrett of the Parapsychology Foundation. Other names filter into headlines, like Peter Hirkos of Milwaukee, Arthur Ford, and even Jean Dixon's reporter. Ruth Montgomery, who is searching for her own psychic truth. It seems as though everybody is either doing it or watching very intently, while others are doing it. Some are incisive and properly critical, like Alan Spraggett at the Toronto Star. Some try to teach others, like Harold Sherman. How to begin your ESP breakthrough. But no matter what the experience of these other people, you will be convinced of your own extrasensory ability only when you have your first or maybe second big psychic breakthrough. Then, and only then, will you truly be convinced that there is something to it after all, and that something may just be the most important experience you're likely to have during this life. Where do you begin? What is extrasensory perception anyway? What is the psi faculty that the ES people refer to? The definition depends largely on an expert's point of view, but ours is simple. Extrasensory perception is the ability to know without empirical data and without regard to a fixed position in space or time. Extrasensory perception is, if you will, the overcoming of the time-space axis. It is the overcoming of the now moment in time or space. Sound too fantastic, difficult, impossible? It's none of these, for we have proven as much as it is possible to prove anything that it is possible to develop this sixth sense in people who have never experienced it and in people who never thought they had it. What is an impression? Extrasensory perception begins with the reception of an impression, which appears to arise outside the ordinary sense data. That means it's got nothing or very little to do with what your five physical senses tell you. It is simply something else. Impressions are like hunches, flashes, daydreams. They are vague or distinct. They can be literally true, or they can be symbolic. Most people report that impressions are like feeling. Others will actually say they see and hear in an extrasensory way. If extrasensory impressions do not come from our conscious faculties or our conscious minds, where do they come from? They must come from a deeper level of consciousness, and impressions seem to come from several sources. Some of these sources are definitely external to our minds. Where do extrasensory impressions come from? For our own understanding, let's divide the mind into the following categories. 1. Conscious mind. This is the receiving station of the five physical senses. It is your assimilating mind, your reasoning mind, your logical mind, the mind of language and ordinary perception. 2. Subconscious mind. This is your storage house, the originator of fantasy and dreams, and creative imagination. Your subconscious is where you remember everything that has ever happened to you as though it were on a tape recorder, ready to be played back on command. 3. Superconscious mind. This is the residence of your extrasensory faculty. This is where your subconscious mind blends into other minds and is connected with events that haven't even taken place. This is where you can go backward or forward in time. This is the part of your mind that can travel about unlimited by your present position in space. It is through this activity of your mind that you get your truest extrasensory impressions. 4. Divine mind. Divine mind is that spark of divinity called your soul, which is in you and every living thing. It is a part of the greater divinity, which we call the God power of the universe or infinite intelligence. It is the causative force behind all people, things, and events. When you listen for the inner clues, the voices of intuition, extrasensory revelations of what you should do, you automatically open your entire being. You judge each experience individually with its own framework of meaning. Defensiveness and rigidity of interpretation cease. You are more conscious of reality as it exists rather than viewing it in preconceived categories. This view actually makes you more realistic in dealing with situations, enables you to evaluate with greater clarity. Through the complex methods of weighing and balancing your truest feeling, you're able to teach within and locate that which is satisfying and true. It is a growing process, not a stagnant insulation from the world. It is involvement in life. It is your own extrasensory potential being put to use for you. Some ordinary and not so ordinary case histories of ESP. Mrs. J.S. was in her 40s, active in civic affairs, and the wife of a prominent executive. She had 3 children, all in their teens. She had attended one of our study groups and had learned the basic technique of extrasensory perception. She has made herself aware of her own extrasensory faculty, and she could, as a result of her daily practices, tell the difference between a genuine extrasensory impression and a thought which originated in her own subconscious mind. As she sat in her Michigan home one morning drinking coffee, something unusual came to her. As she told it, she was looking out an upstairs window onto her lovely garden below. Suddenly, she saw her mother sitting in a rocking chair, eyes closed, quietly rocking back and forth. But her mother lived in Cincinnati and couldn't be in Michigan and Ohio simultaneously. Mrs. J.S. concluded, as a result of her own training, that 2 basic explanations could account for this phenomena. One explanation was that her mother was experiencing an astral projection, and this was her astral or etheric body in the garden below. The other explanation was that her mother had passed on and had come to enjoy the garden in materialized form. The vision shortly dissolved. However, a phone call would help clarify the issue. Calmly, Mrs. J.S. called the Cincinnati number and found that her mother had been admitted to the hospital in a deep coma. They didn't expect her to live, and the members of the family were being summoned. Mrs. J.S. made plans to go, of course, and as she did, she made a note of the time the vision had appeared in the garden. When she arrived in Cincinnati, she learned that her mother had already passed on just prior to her phone call. The amazing thing was that the time of her passing was officially listed as 10:12 a.m., the exact time that Mrs. J.S. saw her mother in the garden. A Ouija board experience. Many moons ago I lived again, I come, patience worth my name. So began the eerie encounter with a discarnate person who decided to communicate by means of the Ouija board. Patience came to an average housewife, Mrs. Curran. On a hot July evening, Mrs. Curran and a friend, Mrs. Hutchings, were playing at the board when the Patience Worth message came through. Over a period of years, Patience communicated with Mrs. Curran in perfectly constructed 17th century English. 2 of her novels were actually published as a result of this form of communication. Real estate business success due to ESP. Jeb M. was a successful real estate salesman. He had been commended over and over again for his sales ability and became an important business figure. I knew him long before I developed an interest in psychic matters. He studied hypnosis keenly and was fascinated by human behavior and the higher realms of the mind. One day I asked him his key to success, His firm had grown into a multi-million-dollar brokerage house. "First, I tell myself that I can do it," he said. He went on to tell me the story of how he mentally tuned in on people to find out how to motivate them, how to get them to say yes to his ideas. First, he relaxed and gave himself the direction that he would tune in on a particular person. Then, he let his mind be receptive and neutral. He didn't try to force an impression. It was through his intuitive clues that he set his course of action, made the sale, closed the business deal, or whatever his goal happened to be. How ESP helped Anna become a bride. One of the most amazing cases of extrasensory perception used for an individual's personal welfare was that of Anna M., who worked at a large public utility. She had been the librarian for the company for over 15 years. She was unmarried, and everyone had lost hope that she'd ever find a man. She had a mild curiosity about psychic things, and we had lunch together from time to time. I'd tell her my latest ESP experiences, and she was always amused with them. We happened to have one of our regular lunchtime sessions on the first day of June. I remarked that it was the month for brides, and she replied, "Yes, I know. I'm always the bridesmaid, but never the bride." It surprised me to hear her say this because she usually did not refer to her state of being unmarried. Why don't you try your own ESP? Just tell yourself that the husband of your dreams will come along. Then let yourself be led by your own inward knowing. Don't try to be too logical or reasonable about your movements in time or space. Just let yourself be carried by the tide of events, and your own instinct for extrasensory action will bring your husband to you. I used to give her a 3-minute course in extrasensory decision-making, the whole point of which was to try not to be conscious of everything all the time. I explained that being too logical is a hindrance, that ESP works best as a vague feeling about the rightness or wrongness of a thing, rather than as something that always hits you like a bolt out of the blue. She tried not to be ruled by her conscious reasoning mind. During the day, she let herself enjoy the luxury of daydreaming at times and took a walk each lunch hour. But she didn't plan her walk. She just allowed herself to be led in a random fashion. She decided one day, while walking past the automobile club offices, to go in and join, and that's where it started. A year later, to be exact, she was married to a widower who worked in the auto club, whom she met when she decided to join. When I congratulated them at the wedding, she replied, "That's ESP. How to find what you want through ESP." Ever try to find a place to live by using extrasensory perception? One woman in our study group found an apartment building with a vacancy. She had seen it in impression after she'd asked herself where she should look. Ever wonder if you could use your extrasensory perception to get a good buy on something? A teenage boy in our study group got his first automobile by following a hunch while he was looking for the right car at the right price. He located a used car that had what he wanted by just following his own inner guidance system as he drove. Ever think it would be fun to use your extrasensory perception to get someone to telephone you? It can happen all the time, even in an emergency. A college student studying unfoldment with us did just that to reach out through his own mental telepathy and ask his girl to call him when he was ill, and couldn't rouse anyone else who could get him to the school's infirmary. What are your impressions saying to you? Extrasensory impressions can come from several sources at once. They can come from your own subconscious mind, they can come from the minds of others through your superconscious mind, or they can appear as revelations directed from the God power arising in your divine mind. Impressions can be helpful to you because they can explain the past. Something may have been troubling you. Just what does a past experience mean? When an apartment transfer really meant promotion, Dick R. had been transferred to the New York City office. It was a promotion, but only a slight one. He didn't know how to interpret it. The move didn't seem logical to him. He was doing well in Dallas. It looked as though he would become the regional manager there, but in New York, he had an insignificant staff position. In addition, he reported to a man who was difficult to work with. His wife didn't care for the move either because her friends were back at home. Dick wrote to me telling of his promotion and the negative situation that surrounded it. He asked what he should do. My interpretation was quick in coming for as I read the letter. The pictures began to form and the impression came, though immediately. Dick was being prepared not for the regional manager's job, but for the higher position of vice president. The transfer to New York City was a testing time. His past experience had been too closely associated with but one region. He would have been perfectly qualified for the regional job, but the company wanted to know if his ability extended beyond even that excellent position. I wrote my answer quickly and sent it with the advice to relax, dwell on the positive, and know that there was a force working for the outcome of total good in his life. He was being watched and evaluated. He was being tested, and to meet the test, he must simply have the faith that he would do the right thing. That way he would attract all good to himself, and people and events would work to his advantage. Follow your own extrasensory hunches and don't get jammed up with negation, I concluded. Only 6 months later, he wrote to tell me of his new position, vice president. This time he was transferred to Washington, D.C. He and his family settled in a beautiful suburb in Virginia, and they are all very happy. Someday, he may even get another promotion. Insight into present circumstances. Extrasensory impressions can also give you insight into your present position and circumstances. Mabel M. was interested in spiritual matters. She was religious, but without any formal training. Her view of psychic matter was open, intelligent, and broad-based. She read widely in the field, but couldn't seem to find the proper thing to do with her interest and energy. She knew she wanted to help others, but she couldn't find the right vehicle. She had been the editor of a weekly newspaper. She'd been active in politics, and she had a fine husband and 2 children in college. Mabel came to see me for a psychic consultation. She was more interested in the meaning of her present state of indecision than in anything else. The extrasensory impression that I received was simple indeed. This is your regenerating period. You're being renewed, revitalized, and filled with new vigor, I said after a few minutes of conversation. Within a year, you'll be doing something new. This something is being made possible by this period of renewal. I continued, so don't be frustrated by it. We then went on to other matters. A year later, she became interested in a healing prayer group. She formed one of her own, and it met each Thursday morning at her home. Many miracles were reported in the group as a result of its efforts. Not only healings, but changed lives and reformed situations resulted. They were spreading love and harmony to all they came in contact with. Mabel had found a fulfilling outlet for her energy and her interest in the psychic and spiritual side of life. Future trends indicated by ESP, extrasensory impressions, can also indicate the trend of the future and guide you in decision making. One of the most exciting aspects of ESP is its ability to foretell the future, either as a warning or in order to give us something to look forward to. If you know the future ahead of time, what would you do? She asked. She had made her appointment without giving a name. She was what I call the ladies and gentlemen of mystery, who don't want you to know who they are, but expect you to tell them things about themselves that they already know as proof of extrasensory perception. Their behavior is usually predictable. A furtive telephone call. Are you the man who claims to be a psychic? May I see you Saturday at 10 o'clock? It is a set conversation. This particular woman was nervous and skeptical at our first meeting, but managed to get her concern out about the future. Well, what do you want to know about the future? I asked. She answered crisply. I know my husband is going to die within a few months. I dreamed of it, even though no one had diagnosed it or told me. He is in perfect health. Then I'd do my best to make those last months especially happy for both of you, I said. She visited me once more. This time, it was a few days after her husband's funeral. He had died of a heart attack, suddenly, at his office. He had tried to make the last few months happy. He also appeared in a dream to her on the night his body was buried and thanked her for a beautiful life together. Her knowing the future made a difference. She knew that his time was about to come, and she carried herself with pride and with loving tenderness. How to interpret impressions. Sometimes extrasensory impressions are more symbolic than literal. An impression may come in very clearly, but its meaning can be obscured by the symbology. Following are 3 ways to help you interpret your impression. First, the key to the interpretation of a completed or highly abstract impression is simply the meaning that the particular symbol has for you. For example, a scene by a beautiful lake may mean tranquility to you, or it could mean loneliness and apartness from people, or it could mean something basic, natural growth, the seasons, air, and water. Ask yourself the question, what does this symbol mean to me usually? The second key to interpreting symbols is to make your mind neutral, a blank, or receptive. Then recreate the symbol in your mind's eye. It will evoke other symbols from your subconscious mind. Those symbols will cause others to form, and so on until you've reached a final meaning which is vastly important in its relation to the original symbol. Yet, this final meaning would not have been made known to you unless you allowed yourself to go through the process of finding the final meaning in this step-by-step way. Third, if you submit the symbol or series of symbols to your own subconscious mind just before you go to sleep, you'll be working it out while you sleep. Often you'll find that you have the meaning just as you awaken the next morning. Sometimes it will come during your meditation period, the following day. You're actually allowing your mind the time to follow the symbol along to its final meaning while you sleep. You may even dream about the impression for several nights before it becomes clear to you. But it'll be worth waiting for. It may contain a warning, or it may be suggesting a course of action. It may reveal a deep feeling, or it may even be pointing the way to a new phase of life. Basic techniques in developing extrasensory perception. Here are 2 basic techniques for building your extrasensory awareness. They can be used during meditation to help you overcome the time-space axis. With these exercises, you can move out of your present location in time or space. You will encourage impressions to come to you. You will awaken your psychic centers. Extrasensory impressions will be built even when you're not doing the exercises. These exercises should be performed each day for about 6 weeks. You'll begin to notice improvements right away, but by the time the 6-week period is up, you will be getting extrasensory guidance even when you least expect it. Exercise number 1. A. Relax. Make your mind a blank. B. Decide where you would like to visit, a destination. C. Create a pinpoint of light about 6 inches from your forehead. D. Feel as though you were that pinpoint of light. E. Gradually move the light toward out into the sky. I. Then move the light in the sky to the point where it should be. Descend its destination. Where it is moving, see the terrain below as you would see it in flight. Picture the cities, the rivers, the mountains, and plains. G. Let the light descend at its destination. Allow it to look around, picking up thoughts, feelings, visions, and voices. H. Return using the same process. Make notes on what you sensed. Exercise number 2. A. Relax. Make your mind a blank. B. Let your awareness float where it will. C. Make notes on what you sense. The timeline exercises. The timeline exercises are designed to help you move your conscious awareness back and forth along the timeline without specific reference to the present. Thus, the past, present, and future are as one continuous line unbroken. Exercise number 1. A. Make your mind a blank while you are in a restful, quiet, relaxed, and passive state. B. Select a person or place. C. Recreate that person or place in your mind's eye. D. Allow a setting to create itself around the person or thing. E. Describe that setting or write it in your diary. F. Recreate the original person, place, or thing, then move it backwards in time. G. Describe the backward setting and make a note of it in your diary. Exercise number 2. A. Make your mind a blank while you're in a restful, quiet, relaxed, passive state. B. Allow a picture of someone to form in your mind's eye. Do not select a person, simply allow someone to come into thought. C. Allow a setting to form. Let it dissolve and permit another setting to form. Let it dissolve, etc. D. Make notes of the various settings, the actions preferred, and of the feelings you had. How extrasensory perception works. The earliest and still most common example of extrasensory perception is the forecasting of events in dreams. The Old Testament is full of such dream sequences in the Torah or ancient Pentateuch. Dreams are the very first things many psychiatrists investigate for a good look into our unexplored other selves. Consciousness is the world we see with our five senses. It is the world we know about, the one we live in, the one where day-to-day action is born. It is the place where things happen, but beneath the conscious is the area we are not aware of. Here, we store the detail of our lives. Here is where we remember everything that ever happened to us, even though sometimes that memory escapes our conscious mind. Often, hypnotists are able to reactivate the forgotten detail, enabling us to recall often with great significance the earliest days of our childhood. It is herein that most extrasensory perception probably takes place. It is where our dreams originate. It is where our innermost desires are born and live, and rule our lives from behind a wall, as it were. Before psychiatry was developed, hypnosis or induced sleep was used to tap the hidden mind of the subconscious. But it had been suggested by wise men long before the time of Freud, the father of psychiatry, that our subconscious mind might be related to other minds. Professor Jung used the words collective unconscious to explain our ability to share our lives with all humanity through a mechanism that we all share in common deep within our minds. To a certain extent, we all have the ability to use extrasensory perception because we all share the collective superconscious explained by Jung. The sixfold daily plan, how extrasensory perception may change your way of life. New perception, like new knowledge, can change your way of life. To what extent and in what way is it up to you? My hope is that what follows will help change your life in some beneficial ways. Possibly you'll be an excellent psychic automatic writer or a good person with an accurate hunch now and then. In any case, enjoy your newfound powers. Rule them. Don't let them rule you. For many people, just embarking on the sixfold daily plan is enough to generate the kinds of self-disciplines. Some have written to me that as a result of a few simple consultations, their life has gained meaning through now found interest, avid reading, going to lectures on particularly interesting subjects, starting an effective and well-rounded diet for better health, and still other ways. Some of my clients from the world of show business attest to their newly found ability to make more accurate judgments of new productions. Let there be no mistake about it. The following 6 steps are simple. They're designed to develop as much perception of the world and of yourself as possible. But their success depends not only on your own innate talents, but on your earnest, habitual repetition of the steps in the whole program. How to begin the sixfold daily plan of extrasensory perception. First, keep a goal in mind. Your purpose is to maintain a well-balanced mind, one where you can control the various impulses coming from the subconscious, the powers arising from the extrasensory perceptions, and at the same time participate in the world of conscious reality. You must eat, sleep, work, and love, and be very much a part of the normal, healthy activities around you. Next, you begin the sixfold plan of extrasensory perception exercises. These may all be done during a normal day, in fact, work best when we incorporate the entire program into a fixed routine. For most people, I recommend modest beginnings, increasing the complexity of the exercises gradually. Confusion, unhealthy thoughts, and weak vacillation melt to be replaced by healthy and loving knowledge of the inner self, the world at large, and those you love and care for. It is like an electrical charge touching all those who know you and come from the very depths of your mind. Following are the basic steps for your organized program. 1. The waking and breakfast period. Dreams are with you at this time, and they are crucial windows on your psychic presence. a tablet beside the bed to record whatever fragments of thought patterns are freshest in your minds. When you awaken starts the day. Then the tablet should be put aside for use later during the meditation period, for subconscious fragments will reorganize themselves fully as the new pattern of self-unfoldment, truth, and understanding frees your creative nature. While going about your normal morning's routine, we recommend no conversation or interruption by radio or TV. This should be a sanctified time. This is the time of the day when your scenes are at their best, and it is a good thing to get them gradually alerted to the work you will put them to later on. Sharpen by clearing each one in turn: sight, hearing, smell, feel, taste, and so on. Tell yourself, I hear exceptionally well today. Listen to sounds you might otherwise ignore. Make sure you hear everything. Listen carefully. Do this with each of the other senses in their turn. Begin the blending process. This is blend the senses. Try to literally hear with the eyes, see with your sense of feel, and so forth. Bringing your imagination into play, you thus help to unclog the inspiration that will arise from the collective nature of the superconscious. You are helping the roadways to establish themselves by attributing to each fundamental perception or sense the qualities of each other. Finally, you are ready to stretch your hidden powers to their fullest. Recall specific sounds. Imagine particular sights. Imagine a certain touch from the previous day. Recall older sights and sounds. Then alter them, rearrange them in your mind to fit your new mood. Recall disharmonious experiences. Put yourself in a new relationship with them. Then erase that particular set of disharmonious experiences and being in another. You are actually bringing the clearing process into action by recall. The ability to recall, to feel the former situation with detail as if it were happening in the present, is a vital step in overcoming the fixed time-space conclusions we have been falsely taught. It enables you to reevaluate the disharmonious experiences in light of new truth about them. Next, you're ready for projection. On the basis of recall, you'll be able to project yourself into future actions, happenings, states of mind for yourself and others in such a way you'll be able to organize and project success yet to come by bringing it to your psychic mind ahead of time. Some call this process prayerizing, and to a certain extent it is, but when psychic presence is our guide, then prayer technique is only a single aspect of our projection of the future success. Close this exercise by recording the morning's experiences in your diary. Abstract shorthand, essence of thoughts, not complete sentences, is best for your diary. By writing your insights this way, you help organize their deepest meaning for use in meditation later in the day. 2. The working day. Intuitive perception is the neighbor of clairvoyance. Psychic occurrences draw on spirit guides, the protective angels who are working with us for the great unfoldment. But first level intuition is accomplished almost naturally without outside assistance. On your way to work and throughout your routine day, you will notice that certain people, casual people you pass, bring important insights to your mind. You can't help getting impressions of them, their state of mind, their background, their destination, their jobs, their ages. Insights about them are evident. The power to decipher the condition under the surface of things is a vital first step to psychic knowledge and awareness. During the waking day, during your meetings with people, effort should be made to encourage these impulses, to see them, to know them, to work with them, to understand what motivates people underneath. You will gain mastery over situations. Experience that is the basis of leadership of all kinds. Every successful politician, businessman, every leader of men has developed this power of insight. They develop it, utilize it for mastery over people. They want to lead, and they gain psychic insight of what moves people subliminally, underneath the surface. It is a power of the first level, and one that almost every serious student has to a surprising degree. Gradually, you may be able to try automatic writing or sending or receiving telepathic thoughts from others in need and projecting to them new energy, love, power, and greatness, psychic gifts, and personal truth. There may be some days when you are dry, that is, when ESP seems very difficult. At other times it will be easy. That is to be expected. The idea is to develop the habit of using ESP so that you can use it as a preparation for advanced power. Conclude every day with a harsh spiritual stock taking and set a self-improvement resolution for the next day. Make sure not to be too sweeping with resolutions. They should be easily performed and for the next day only. 3. Entering the sleeping state. You should always be ready for sleep and pleasant dreams. The best sleep is complete deep sleep that allows full mind and body rest. Partial sleep or light sleep, which permits some of our conscious faculties to be responsive to the slightest noise, is not deep, recuperative sleep. The conscious mind must recede in the 5 senses. It's dormant. Sleep is an art, defining inner well-being and psychic unfoldment. The simple process of undressing before retiring can be put to advantageous use by banishing all worrisome thoughts and the high-pitched activity of the day from your mind. One should not proceed to sleep until all discordant thoughts have been abandoned and put to rest in the subconscious mind. Otherwise, a restless and unbeneficial sleep will result. 4. Exercise. Proper diet and exercise are imperative in good psychic conditioning. Regular exercise in keeping with your age and health is essential. The exercise should be strenuous enough to absorb your mental activities. It is the only way we have of diverting our concentration from psychic activity long enough for a natural equilibrium to take place. This equilibrium between psychic presence and workaday conscious activity gives our psychic insight an opportunity to catch up, to integrate new experiences, new psychic gifts. We are very much a part of the world. That is why we are gifted in the first instance. That is also why we cannot remove ourselves completely from the world, why exercise brings us back to conscious reality. 5. Prayer life. Your whole life can be summarized as a prayer or thanksgiving. As you walk in cosmic attunement, you realize that you are praying always. Prayer is a natural response to the excitement of life and its wonderful experiences. The last thoughts before sleep should be ones of rest. Put your entire well-being in the faithful trust of infinite intelligence and godly protection. Visualize your very being, your very essence, as it may be lifted to God in rest. Prayer, thoughts for others, wishes, desires, blessings should occupy your mind as you visualize the great, quiet waters of truth and healthfulness reaching down and touching your soul. 6. Finally comes your meditative period. This is the peak of the productive day and should occur just before sleep. It is best to pick a restful, quiet place and a specific time each day. Your dream notepad from the morning and projection diary provide the basic material for the contemplation period, at least as a starter. Then you develop a series of questions you hope to have answers to by the time you wake in the next morning. Include any distorted signals you may have gotten from people during the working day and try to sum up by getting a resolution for yourself. Do not at any time fight with yourself or your abilities. Don't try to mix a helter-skelter rush around existence with psychic development. It simply won't work. To do it is to ruin your health. You are to allow mystical experiences to take place. You can't then force it upon yourself. Knowledge, in a sense, happens to you. Enjoy yourself. Let worry depart, especially during meditation. Relax all over, and your state of mind will improve right away. Your powers take a little time. Your ESP Meditation Outline. The meditation program should be organized each day. The general structure should be the same. Although the material will vary, of course, let the following plan work for you. 1. Silence. It is a good idea to begin with just a few moments of silence. This should help relax the senses and call the psychic presence into action. Feel your mind going backwards into the inner recesses, the psychic presence depths, across the planes of existence. A quiet, darkened place regularly available is best for this important first step. 2. dream interpretation. Next come the fragments or basic patterns from the morning's dream. Let each of the scenes come back to you effortlessly. Remember as much as you can, then recall other similar scenes. Take each word from the recall scene and follow that word backward through free association to its originally personal meaning. There's almost always an important message from the psychic presence in our dreams, and the dreams need to be decoded by recall before you can project them into future unfoldment. Remember all significant emotions surrounding the recall, words, and scenes. This process frees the mind so that the divine mind insights may vibrate their way freely into your consciousness. In recall, the technique used is to follow one word or scene backwards, again and again as it were, until the series of scenes or words concludes. In this way, a series of new meanings becomes evident. One scene suggests another, while in turn suggests a third. Finally, a basic continuity emerges, which is the clue to the clairvoyant message. You will find the process becomes automatic as you progress with the program. By following each detail to its final resting place, gradually you put the jigsaw meanings into place, and the entire vibration of the reading becomes clear. The decision is made. It is important not to look for logical responses. The first ideas which come to your mind should be heeded. Follow further scenes quickly before your conscious mind has an opportunity to intervene. You'll be amazed by the most accurate revelations, the clues to future successes and effective personal decisions. 8. Texts. Guidance texts, either from the Bible or from great books, should be next. Read over a few phrases to yourself, then pause and contemplate on their full meaning for your life and for your loved ones. It will surprise you how psychic awareness will come to you by doing this. New prophecy and possibly even clairvoyant mental healing will wing its way to you and others in need of your help. Often a very remote idea taken from a text will suddenly bring to form an entirely new meaning for your future or someone else's. The underlying pattern are what we are looking for, and the same association process operates with texts as with dreams, with simple free association and finally in trance. For example, if you choose a test about a mountain and while contemplating you see a friend of yours come into vision, then the conclusion might be that the friend may be about to have a significant experience in connection with a mountain. It may be simply a trip to the mountains, or it may be more complicated. The mountain may stand for something else, a roadblock in that person's life, or it may mean some special kind of love or financial development. Through further investigation of the meaning of this combination of signals through recall, association, mental wandering, the ultimate message stands out. The principle here is that the insignificant or irrelevant, when followed by their natural conclusions, have the most profound implications for the future. The example above is a simple one, of course, but it should be remembered that one meaning or insight placed next to another freely arrived at brings a third meaning related to the first two, but with a final psychic meaning of its own. 4. Free association period. Next, let your mind simply take its own direction by itself. Try to think freely of nothing at all. It is impossible to think of nothing, and when we try to do it, our mind quickly fills with a series of unrelated images, often even more scrambled than the ones arising from the text meditation or dream interpretation. But whatever does come to your mind, you should write it down for use later, just before you go to sleep. The free association period, as I call it, gets the deep psychic energy going. When we try to think of nothing, we are close to the trance state. Our conscious mind takes a leave of absence to a certain extent, and the subconscious walks forward with the impulses from the psychic presence. These images are important. They are fresh, often brand new, and they need to be committed to the subconscious work during sleep so they may reappear as dream material the following morning. 5. Prayers. Conclude your meditation with a few prayers, a general stock taking, and a resolution for the next day. Later, when you go to sleep, Let your mind drift over the items you wrote down during the free association period. Ask that you may know about these items before you wake, possibly in dreams. The material from the meditation period enters your subconscious for dynamic action during sleep. You regain the same psychic presence material revitalized as dream material the next morning. You will write it on your dream notepad and utilize it in that day's meditation period. Unfoldment will come startlingly alive, for psychic awareness works for the slightest suggestion. How does your psychic awareness participate in this important process? Your prayer period and your meditation period formulate the questions and answers coming from your psychic presence. They will be somewhat tentative at first, since you cannot command action, but they will bring about ultimate harmony, peace, health, and success. You must continue these exercises in an intense and positive manner. You must visualize divine mind coming to life within you. See it taking shape. Feel your mind freeing itself. Feel your life changing. As you proceed step by step, you will find divine inspiration, the psychic presence, walking to harmonize all your feelings and actions. Personal satisfaction and sensitive unity of all your mind processes will begin to take hold of your very destiny. All mind forces near you, operating on the same vibratory pattern of psychic presence unfoldment, will aid you in driving out all evil and disharmony. You'll be able to summon prophecy and wisdom and mental healing for yourself and loved ones. Your integration and full mind potential is near, and you'll be able to feel it come about as new vigor, satisfaction, and lust for living. 6. Group meditations. If you're seeking unfoldment with others, you can perform group exercises, preparing meditations together. In these instances, members of the group each in turn state items from the dream pad, and the group analyzes the information. The members let their minds glide inwards for the telepathic signals of insight. The same is done with texts and spontaneous prayers. The group advances together. Care should be taken in organizing the items to be used, the person to be called upon in advance, so once the group meditation begins, it can proceed under its own momentum without a leader indicating which way it should go. The principle to follow is spontaneous experience. Discussion should follow the psychic events, not interrupt them. Direction from the group leader should be kept to an absolute minimum. The general course of the meditation can be agreed upon ahead of time, so that the momentum is inwardly creative and healthy. Almost all groups leave time for testimony from members of what has happened in their lives since the last meeting. Starting and ending a group meeting with silence is essential. Members should not converse either before or after a session, but rather start and end on time and follow the outline proposed. Social occasions are best scheduled separately from the study meetings. Points to remember. 1. The superconscious mind can conceive and send extrasensory impressions. Impressions are like hunches, flashes, daydreams. They can be felt, seen, or heard. They can be literal or symbolic. 2. Impressions come from several sources, sometimes all at once. They can come from within, they can come from other living people, from discarnates, and from God. 3. Impressions are meaningful because they explain the past, give us insight into our present conditions, or indicate the trend of the future. They offer courses of action and guide us in decision-making. 4. It is also possible to send impressions to other people. Thoughts are things which become experiences for those to whom we are sending them. 5. There is no limit to thought power and the effectiveness of its directed energy. 6. Timeline and space-line exercises can help you overcome the space-time axis and your limitation in the now moment. 7. The sixfold daily plan for developing greater extrasensory perception includes the waking and breakfast period, the working day, the sleeping state, exercises, prayer, and meditation. 8. Your ESPN meditation outline for use each day includes silence, dream interpretation, texts, a free association period, and prayer. 9. Psychic energy can be pooled and insight gained by following the ESPN outline in a meditative group. Now, this concludes this particular chapter, but as you can tell, there's some amazing information from Kingdon Brown here. A couple observations. First of all, the woman that could see that her husband was going to die. My question to everybody is, did she create that? Sometimes, how do you differentiate a vision and then you're creating a situation? Oftentimes, we think we're seeing the future as a prophecy, but we're actually creating it. So I wonder about that differentiation. If she saw her husband suddenly dying, imagine him living a longer period of time. Understand, when you're trying to predict the future, it's never going to be 100% accurate because there are multiple streams of time. In a multidimensional universe, you can only really go with probabilities. So you'll get into situations where you'll kind of see the probable events that will occur, but you'll never be 100% when it's future. In the past, you can get all kinds of wonderful information. The particular exercises described here are very important. Analyzing your dreams, your senses, your hunches, your flashes, free association periods, looking at certain texts. These are all things that have really helped me, and I was doing it even before I had read Kingdon Brown. There is a bunch of really cool chapters also in here. These are very complete chapters, and he is teaching how to enhance your psychic abilities, something that is one of my goals on this podcast. I believe that in the reality revolution, this new reality, we will all have these amazing powers, and even someday we'll be able to shrink ourselves and travel outside of our bodies, explore the Akashic record, instantaneously create and bilocate. All kinds of things will be available, and we'll be able to travel instantaneously to other galaxies within our body. These are all abilities we have. The first step is just simple psychic impressions. We're so into our third density consciousness. It is so thick, and this illusion is so difficult to tread through that we do not realize that we are active fountains of God, and we have this amazing power. All the time, we miss out on using it. All the time, we ignore the flashes and intuitions that come to us. The more that you study this stuff, the more that you practice it and put exercises into place, the more you'll become aware of these flashes of insight, and they'll change your life in so many subtle ways. So please put in the comments your personal experiences with extrasensory impressions and what exercises and activities that you do to really gain an understanding of these flashes, and how you would suggest other people could do the same thing. Whenever we meditate together, I think that is a very powerful and helpful thing. And it would be powerful to sit in a group of 8 or 9 or 10 and discuss your dreams with others and tune in together. It's always better if we can tune in group meditations. There's a lot of information here, and I would love if you just let me know how this influences or enhances your extrasensory perceptions. Some of these exercises are simple, but when done together with this intention, I believe that you can enhance your own powers. This makes me think also of the book Karma by Sadhguru that I recently read, and I was saddened because he's so devoutly against siddhis. He will go around the world and stopping people's extra abilities because he believes that we become like carnival acts and it takes us away from our spirituality. I think they go hand in hand, and then we can be both spiritual and awaken these abilities at the same time. I'd like to get your impressions of that. You can find all episodes of The Reality Revolution at therealityrevolution.com. And welcome to The Reality Revolution.